Hey everyone, thanks for joining me for another episode of Think Your Way to an Epic Life. My next guest, Jim Marshall, has created a system that will help you go from 7 different levels in 35 different areas of your life. You'll understand where you are, you'll understand about yourself, you can understand about the people in your lives. It's pretty fascinating. Give it a listen. Please leave comments, let me know what you think, and if you'd like to dig a little deeper into this. Thanks. Jim, thank you so much for joining us.
Hi, Kara.
Hi, Jim. It's good to have you here. So, you have created something that out of thin air that is really helping people. Can you give us an overview?
Sure. Well, I am the discoverer of hitherto unknown natural phenomena, which greatly aid in the understanding of people, from which I created a revolutionary practical philosophic system called Septemics and published it in the book Septemics, Hierarchies of Human Phenomena. Septemics is a philosophical science based on the fact that many phenomena related to humans occur in a sequence of 7 levels. Literally, the word septemics means of or pertaining to 7. Septemics comprises a collection of scales or sequences, each of which breaks down various human phenomena into a hierarchy of 7 steps. There are 35 such scales, each of which is unique. And between them, they span the spectrum of human experience, by which I mean any problem, dilemma, difficulty, situation that has anything to do with people can be analyzed by one or more of these scales, usually more than one.
Okay, so someone who's just starting out, they're reading your book. Where is there one of the 35 that's most important? Do you work on one first?
Well, that's two different questions. Probably the most important one is the first one in the book, which is the scale of basic purposes. Because what could be more important than knowing someone's basic purpose, including your own? All humans have one of 7 basic purposes. This is a persistent trait. More than 95% of the population lives an entire lifetime at one level of that scale. So once you determine someone's level, you know that person for good. For example, I know the basic purpose of every president of the United States, going back as far as Franklin Delano Roosevelt, and many of the presidents previous, such as Washington and Lincoln and Jefferson, because I studied them. This is not hard to get. People tell you their levels. So some of the scales are what I call persistent, and some of them are what I call volatile, like the scale of evaluation. That changes by the minute. Whereas the scale of spiritual identity, that rarely changes on a person. I mean, sometimes it changes, but it takes a long time for that to change. So the scales, as I said, every scale is unique. You cannot infer anything about scale A by studying scale B. And this is good because since every scale is unique, between them, they span the spectrum of human experience. If I may, I'd like to tell you the names of the 35 scales, and then you'll know exactly what subject matter is covered in this book.
Go for it, please.
Okay, so there are 24 scales, which are called individual scales, meaning they apply to an individual, and 11 are group scales, meaning they apply to a group. These are the individual scales: the scale of basic purposes, the scale of personal influence, the scale of choice, the scale of permeation, the scale of thought, the scale of identity, the scale of evaluation, the scale of motivation, the scale of control, the scale of stopping, the scale of scholarship, the scale of literacy, the scale of human ability, the scale of memory, the scale of spiritual identity, the scale of mental deletion, the scale of aberration, the scale of physical fitness, the scale of justification, the scale of belief, the scale of equanimity, the scale of attack, the scale of conflict, and the scale of reaction. And the group scales are the scale of relationships, the scale of life spheres, the scale of government, the scale of civilization, the scale of survival, the scale of management, the scale of exchange, the scale of communication, the scale of allegiance, the scale of sexuality, and the scale of politics. Any one of these scales by itself could dramatically improve the life of the reader. And let me give you an example of how that would work. I mentioned the scale of motivation. One of the most important things to know about a person is the person's motivation. That's how the police solve crimes. They look for someone with a motive. So somebody's been murdered, right? They find some guy. Well, this guy has nothing to gain by this person dying, so he's not a suspect. But wait a minute. There's an insurance policy for $500,000, and the wife is the beneficiary, so she becomes a suspect. Doesn't mean she did it, but that's how they go about this. This is very helpful to know people's motives. So you could, for example, ask, using the scale, what is my husband's motivation toward me? What is my mother's motivation toward me? What is my boss's motivation toward me? What is my grandmother's motivation toward me? Etc., etc. So you could use this one scale in this particular way 200, 300, 400, 500 times on everybody you know. And then you could reverse the vector and say, what is my motivation toward my pastor? What is my motivation toward my sister? What is my motivation toward my boyfriend, et cetera, and use it again 200 or 300 or 400 ways. Now, by the time you finish this exercise, you will know your motive toward everybody in your life and the motive of everybody in your life toward you. And every time you spot one of these, you have a realization. You say, that's why my mother does that, because she has that motivation. See? And that happens every time you do this. So this is a fruitful source of insight.
Okay. And so what do you do with the insight? I mean, are you coaching people to the book?
Well, I don't really need to coach people to the book, although I don't object to doing that. I've had a long career as a human development engineer, working one-on-one with hundreds of clients for cumulatively thousands of hours. And that's how I discovered this material. But the book I wrote in such a way that once you have the book, you don't need anything else in order to use it, except perhaps a dictionary. But I would say that for every book in existence.
Right.
But everybody has a dictionary on his phone now. So I was very careful to make it so once you get this book, you can just stay by yourself and study that book and straighten out your whole life to a level that is incomprehensible to almost everyone.
This sounds way too good to be true, and I know it's not. So give us an example of someone who's been changed by it massively.
Okay, so let's say you have a girlfriend, right? Your girlfriend, Mary. Every time you talk to her, she says, Kara, I don't know what I'm going to do. My husband is driving me nuts. He's doing dope. I think he's cheating on me. He gets drunk. It's a terrible situation, right? So after 6 months of this, you get tired of listening to this. So you say, Mary, come here, let me show you something. And you open the book to the scale of relationships. Now, you put it in front of her face. She can read English. And so she looks and she says, you mean there's a scale of relationships? You say, yes. This relationship that you've been complaining to me about for 6 months, where is it on this scale? Guaranteed she is going to want to know that because she's having trouble. So she's going to look at this scale and say, yeah, where is this on? And what's going to happen is in a matter of seconds, she will find a bracket. And she will say something like, well, I can see right away levels 1, 2, or 3 have nothing to do with us because that's the top of the scale and we're having a lot of trouble. See, so she got it down to 4 in seconds. I need to say to her, well, look, you could get this exactly, just read the text. She says, okay, so she reads the text. You can help her as a tutor. She comes back and says, well, now that I read it, I can see we're at level 5. No wonder we're having trouble. That's near the bottom of the scale. And she will have a realization. She'll say something specific like, that explains why we can't do bop-a-da-bop-a-da-bop-a-da-bop. See? And then you could say to her, well, we could move this relationship up to a higher level. She says, you can? Yes, it tells you in the book how to do that. Oh. Then you say, but wait, before we do that, let me show you something else. And you turn to the scale of sexuality. Well, that's relevant, isn't it, to this matter? So she looks at it. She says, you mean there's a scale of sexuality? You say, yes. You don't have to tell me if you don't want, but for your own illumination, where are you on the scale? Guaranteed she's going to want to know that because you're opening a door for her. So she looks at it, and in a matter of seconds, she'll find a bracket. She'll say, well, I can see right away 6 and 7 have nothing to do with me, so it's got to be 1 through 5. You say, okay, go ahead and read it, and then you can get it exactly. So she reads it. She knows who she is. Once she studies it, she says, I can see I'm at level 4. That's not too bad. That's in the middle. But she might also say, my husband Fred, he's at level 5. That explains a lot. That explains why we're having all this trouble. See? Now, I could keep doing this, what I've been doing for the last minute, for 20 or 30 or 40 different contexts. See? Because some of these skills are specific skills, so they apply in different contexts. So she could take this book and do this exercise, and maybe she'll find where their relationship is, or where her boyfriend is, or where she is on 20 or 25 different scales. Every time she does, she'll have a relationship. Oh, he's at level 6 on the scale of choice. That explains why he does that. This keeps happening. Now, by the time she finishes this, she's analyzed this whole relationship, and she has a completely different understanding of it. Now, what she does with that is up to her. She might say, well, this is cool. I'm going to get this book, and I'm going to go with my boyfriend, and I'm going to get us to straighten this whole relationship out. See? Now, whether or not he goes along with that, we don't know. He might say, I don't want to do that. See? But he might say, oh, okay, tell me about it, right? We don't know. But another thing could happen. She could say, now that I looked at all this is a waste of my time. We're going nowhere. I'm done with this guy. And dumps him. Now, you might think in that latter case that she's going to be upset about that, and you would be wrong. She will not. She will be relieved. She will say, thank you, Kara, for showing me this. It got me out of this mess. You see?
Very, very much.
That's how this works.
So let's say she decides, hey, I'm a 4 and I want to get to a 3. The book tells her how to go from 4 to 3?
Yes. And let me tell you a little bit about that. There's a rule in engineering which says that 90% of finding the right answer is asking the right question. Why is it that Einstein found the theory of relativity before anybody else did? It's built into the fabric of nature, but nobody else could see it. You know why? He asked the right question. Same thing with Newton and the 3 laws of motion. There's a famous story about the apple falling, and he realized that that's the same force that holds the moon around the earth. See? And he got the 3 laws of motion, which was the beginning of what we call physics today. So how come he got that and nobody got it before? He asked the right question. So this is something that all engineers understand. See? So a guy's trying to fix this radio, right? And he's not getting anywhere. He realizes he must not be asking the right question. See? Now, maybe the question is, does it need a condenser? Maybe the power supply is shot. See, you have to ask the right question to get the right answer. My whole career as a human development engineer was a success because I repeatedly asked the right question, because I used biofeedback to aid me in Socratic dialogue. if you read the Socratic dialogues, of which there are many, the whole point is that Socrates would ask the right question. He'd say to the guy, what does the word ethics mean? And the guy would go bop for 20 minutes, see? And then he would say, but what about this? Oh, I never thought about that. See? Asking the right question. Now, I was aided by biofeedback, which is a fantastic advantage that Socrates didn't have. So somebody comes to me, I interview them. The interview is free, all right? And I spend a lot of time. Tell me about your work. Tell me about your family. How do you get along with your mother? Blah, 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 blah. Right? Just, you have a brother. How do you get along with your brother, right? Now, this is done on biofeedback. So I'm seeing the biofeedback as this guy's talking to me. See? So when he says to me, oh, yeah, my brother Joe, boom, the meter reacts. Oh, this is a place to dig. So we get into the session, you see? Now, tell me about your brother Joe. Boom. Well, I had a lot of trouble with my brother Joe. Oh, really? See, as this happens, the meter is giving me feedback, because if he's upset about him, it reacts one way. If he's worried about him, it reacts another way. If he's angry at him, it reacts another way. If he has a secret from him, it reacts another way. So it reacts telling me, oh, he's got a secret. So I'll say, do you have a secret from Joe? How did you know? As a matter of fact, and we go into that, see, and I get all that, and I know how to take it apart. And then he says, I just had a big realization. Joe's not a bad guy. This is because I was keeping it a secret from him, that I was blah, 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 blah. See, and his relationship with his brother just got better right there. Okay, so when you use Septemics, I have these 7 levels for these 35 different scales, and they are natural law. They are true the way the laws of thermodynamics are true, the way the Pythagorean theorem is true. They are axiomatically true. I know that. I've been working with this material my whole life. It took me a long time before I even realized I had a new subject. I didn't know that, because I was discovering this bit by bit, see?
Right.
So when you find your level, which is not that hard to do, because you know who you are, right? You've been living with yourself for however many decades, right? So you look and say, well, yeah, where am I on the scale of choice? See? Oh, I see. Yeah. See, these levels are so discreetly different from one another, it's not hard to spot where you are. So you say, oh, I'm at the scale of level 4. That explains why I do this and this and this and this and this and this. See? And then, because you know that, the next level up is available to you. You're asking the right question. So you target yourself for level 3, you ignore everything else, and you will get to level 3 because it's the next thing up. It's just like if you're on the first floor and you want to go to the 5th floor, you have to go through the 2nd, 3rd, the 4th, one way or another, whether you take the stairs or the elevator or the escalator, right? So you realize, oh, I'm on the 2nd floor. Now, it's not hard for you to get to the 3rd floor. You know why? It's the next floor. So this is not hard to use because this is natural law, just like the Fibonacci sequence. And for those of you who don't know what that means, there are many things in nature which have these certain numbers. Like if you take a sunflower and you count the seeds one way, you'll get a Fibonacci number. And if you count them the other way, you'll get another Fibonacci number. Now, Fibonacci, who was a brilliant mathematician, saw these numbers kept coming up. What are these numbers? Why is it this number? Because these creatures don't know anything about numbers. So he reverse engineered the formula out of the numbers that he had and gave it to us. And that is what we call the Fibonacci sequence. And because he gave us the formula, we now know those numbers to infinity. That's how this happened. I looked at these phenomena. I said, wait a minute. Something is going on here. I've seen this before. So let me tell you the story about how this evolved.
Please.
It really tells you what this is and how it works. So the story really begins when I was accepted into engineering school at the age of 16. Now, of course, I thought at the time that I would be engineering physical things like airfoils or motors or electrons. But by the time I had my bachelor's degree, it was clear to me that I wanted to engineer the human psyche because it is the area of greatest unknown, of greatest mystery, and more importantly, it is the area in which we as a race are failing miserably. 95% of the problems in industrialized society are because people don't understand people. Don't understand the husband, don't understand the daughter, don't understand the next door neighbor, or blah, 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 blah. It goes in all directions, right? This is why more than 50% of the people in the United States now are not married. And of the ones who are married, more than 50% of them get divorced because they don't understand the person. And it's why all over the world, people routinely elect morons and criminals to run their governments because they don't understand them. So this book solves that problem across 35 axes. So I had a long career as a human development engineer, working using engineering principles, engineering tactics, engineering strategies, engineering devices, et cetera, to help my clients attain higher levels of awareness, ability, ethics, responsibility, consciousness, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, incidentally, while that was going on, I started to notice that I could predict the outcome of the session. I never told that to anyone, but I made notes. And as the decades rolled by, it became clear to me that the client would be at a specific level on a specific scale that I had previously observed. And as a result of our interaction, he would go to the next level up on that scale, which I had previously observed and recorded. This happened thousands and thousands of times, and every time it did, it verified my hypothesis because the clients didn't know anything about that. They didn't know what I was doing, how I was going about this, or that I was writing things down. All the person knows is he comes to me and says, Jim, I have this drinking problem. Can you help me? I say, sure. I put him on the biofeedback and we go at it and I can go. And in 20 minutes, he says, now I see why I started drinking. It was because I forgot about that. See? And in a few sessions, he says, I don't need this alcohol anymore. Poof. Because it's natural law. So he would go up to the next level on any of these scales. Now you advance only on one scale at a time generally. So, he wouldn't even know what scale it is. I'm not telling him that, but I would see it. So by 1995, after decades of this, I had about 32 scales that I had simply observed empirically. There's no theory of septemics. This is all based on direct observation and my writing it down. So I looked at this, and at around that same time, I was contemplating a difficult client, and I realized that this client was at a level on a particular scale that I had not previously observed. So I had this 6-level scale, which I had been using for many decades successfully. So I knew the scale was correct, but it had a 7th level. Now, as soon as I saw what the 7th level was, it was obvious to me where to insert it into the scale. And when I inserted this level into the 6-level scale, making it a 7-level scale, it manifested mathematically. which is to say all of these data jumped out at me. Now, for those of you who are allergic to math, the whole point of math is that you coax data, you start with a formula or an equation and you coax data out of it. That is how Einstein found E equals mc squared. There's no mystery about how we did it. Everybody in the math and physics community knows what the math was. He gave it to us. Okay? So when you have data jump out like that, that is a mathematical phenomenon. You see? So I knew right at that moment that this had mathematics embedded in it, because at that moment, it went from being a line, which is what a scale is, to a plane, which is a whole body of data. So this scale went woof and had all these interlocking pieces of data that fit together like a Chinese puzzle, each of which verified the other. And I said, whoa, I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it has to be natural law because it has mathematics embedded in it. So then I thought, I wonder how many of these other scales that I have are actually 7-level scales that had not been developed all the way because I wasn't developing anything. I was just helping my clients and making notes. So knowing what I was looking for, I then inspected all of these other scales. And in a short period of time, each of them went to 7 levels. And when it went to 7 levels, it manifested mathematically. So now I had 32 7-level scales, all of which had mathematics embedded in them. And I said, this looks like a new subject to me. Because I went to school for 28 years and I never saw anything like this. So several people have said to me, what book is your book like? And I have to tell them, being a well-read person, I don't think there's ever been a book like this before, at least on Earth. But I can tell you this, each of these 35 scales is presented in what you could call a table or a spreadsheet. And each of those tables is very similar to the periodic table of elements. But instead of it being for the elements of matter, it corresponds to each of these 35 subjects that I read to you 10 minutes ago. So the scale of personal influence has a periodic table, and all the data is laid out there for you to see. So, Isaac Newton famously put a beam of white light through a prism and he got the rainbow. Roy G. Biv. Well, he proved that there are 7 components of white light. And if you slow the white light down, putting it through the prism, the different parts of it slow down differently because they go through it at different speeds because the prism has width, and so it comes out in a rainbow. So that is exactly what I did for these 35 subjects. In other words, there is a spectrum. The scale of basic purposes for human beings has a spectrum. There are 7 levels of it, just like the colors of the rainbow. The scale of equanimity. We say, well, there's this thing called equanimity, but I broke it down into the 7 components. And those components are a scale. So it goes from the top to the bottom. So when you find your level on the scale of equanimity, wherever that is, you can then say, all right, I'm going to move myself up to the next level. And you will get there. Let's say you're at level 4 and you want to move to level 3. You will be able to do that if you try. If you try to move to level 1 or 2, you will fail because it's too steep a gradient. So look, you cannot make an Olympic athlete out of a couch potato. There are too many intervening steps. You can maybe make him into a normal person, and then when he's a normal person, you can make him into sort of a weekend amateur athlete. See? And then maybe you can make him into somebody who works out every day. See? And
Baby
if he,
steps.
right. And so those are gradients. So eventually, if he keeps doing this, he someday might become an Olympic athlete. But that is the truth about these scales. If you're at level 6, you can only go to level 5 or level 7. There is no other possibility. I've been working with this for many decades with many people. You cannot skip a level. But think about it. See, if you're looking at the rainbow, right? The rainbow is determined by frequency or wavelength of the vibration. So if you're at orange and you increase the wavelength, you go to yellow. If you decrease the wavelength, you go to red. See, there's no way to get to green without going through yellow. So now you might go through yellow quickly or easily or without noticing, but you do go through it because it's the frequency is increasing. See? So that is useful data because since you cannot skip a level, you know what the next level up is for you. So, in that regard, I have solved the gradient problem that has bedeviled mankind for 6,000 years. And I'll tell you exactly what I mean by that. Most people have problems, dilemmas, situations, difficulties. They don't know how to solve them, right? It's a common problem. Person, I don't know what to do about my son. He's doing this and doing. I can't figure it out, right? 99% of the time or more, it's because the person does not know the gradient. So every good coach, therapist, facilitator in the world knows that human development must be done on a gradient. So let's say you have a good algebra teacher. He knows the gradients. He has to explain to you, this is what a variable is. And we call it X. Oh, okay. See, this is what an equation is. It has the same value on both sides of equal. See, and he brings you along the gradients. And so after 2 semesters, you know algebra. That is what a good therapist or coach does. So I've worked as a physical trainer on people. So this is very easy to see, right? Say some guy comes to me and says, Jim, I'm 100 pounds overweight. I really need help with this. I say, okay, I'll train you. I'm not going to say to this guy, go out and run 5 miles. That's malpractice. What I might say to him is, do you think you could walk 1 mile every morning? See? And he's probably going to say, yeah, I think I could do that. I say, good. I want you to walk 1 mile every morning, and at the end of the week, we'll talk again. So after a week, I'll say to him, how did you do? If he says to me, this is tough, I say, all right, just keep doing it. If he says to me, this has gotten easy for me now, I say, okay, let's go to 2 miles. See, finding the great. That is what I did with my clients for 40 years. The guy would come into me with any problem, difficulty you could imagine, and I would find the gradient and move him up to the next one. You see? Like if you have a guy who hates women, you're not going to get this guy loving women right away. He's going to have to go through a half a dozen different steps to get to that. He might get to the point where he says, well, I can see I don't really hate my mother anymore. See, that's progress for him. That's his gradient. See, and then you keep working on it. And he says, well, I can see that, yeah, a lot of these problems I have with my girlfriends was really my fault. It wasn't really their fault. See, that's news to him.
Right.
See? Oh, yeah, I did these things wrong. See, and after a while, he's dating a supermodel. So that's what I did for my clients. So I took this data and I put it into a book in a way that can be used by anyone who A, can read English reasonably well, and B, wants to improve himself or others or both. That's the deal.
Okay, so you're looking for progress, not perfection. And so you get that progress, and let's say you hit a 7 in a few of these. Is there's no more room for improvement?
Well, let me put it to you this way. First of all, 1 is the top of the scale, 7 is the bottom. But more importantly than that, uh, there are 35 scales. So look, you might have a guy who's doing great in some area. Well, maybe he doesn't need this book, but he's probably doing difficulty in another area, right? So you have a guy, right? He makes $500,000 a year. You know, he's got a doctorate in physics. He's a CEO of a corporation, but this guy can't get women to like him. He can't figure it out. So he might be very high on the scale of human ability, but he might be very low on the scale of sexuality. You see? So, for example, Albert Einstein was at level 1 on the scale of human ability, which is genius. He was there. But I happen to know when it came to his family, he was nowhere near the top of any scale. He dumped his first wife with the kid, got another wife. You see? So there must have been something not great about that. Okay? So you see this all the time with people. All the time. The best example is Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, everybody knows he's a smart man, right? You ever listen to him talk?
Great speaker.
Very smart man. He thinks, he analyzes, he gives you a germane answer. You know, it's not blah, 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 you know, like some people, not mentioning any names. But he is famously a serial abuser of women. Everybody knows this. They sued him. They have gone on video and said with specificity how he raped them. Okay? This is no secret, but it's a perfect example. He's obviously high on one scale and low on another scale. And you see this all the time. When I was in prep school, I had a friend. This guy went all the way through prep school with me, the whole 4 years. Okay? Anything having to do with math or science, he was a whiz. He would get 98, 99. Okay? On anything else, he had a lot of trouble. I was always having to help him with his English, with his Latin, with history, you know. He just couldn't do it. Now, he went on to become a physicist. Well, duh. That's no surprise, you know. Just like I was perfectly suited to become an engineer, and I did. The difference is that I had a polymathic ability, so I was good at every subject. So I would get 99 in physics and 98 in Latin. So it was very easy for me. Uh, Now, most people are not like that. I had another friend who was allergic to math and science. You know, in fact, he never even took physics. He got out of it in senior year and instead took classical literature, which was right up his alley. So that's the way people are. Most people are high in some skills and low in other skills. I can tell you, I already know because I've been working with this for decades. Less than 1% of the population is at or near the top of all the scales. So that means more than 99% of us need this book.
Right.
And a much larger percentage is at or near the bottom of all these scales, something like 4%. This is the type of guy who's a professional criminal who's also a drug addict and a racist. Okay? That, you know why he's like that? Because he's at or near the bottom of many of these scales. Why is he at or near the bottom of many of these scales? I'll tell you. One of the axioms of this subject is that when a person is at or near the top of any scale, it's because he's insightful in that area. It's not hard to use this because you can use it on the top and the bottom both. So, for example, when I moved to Arizona, I met somebody. I could see right away that this person was at or near the top of many of these scales. Came right out of her mouth. So I said, this is somebody I want to keep around. I'm still associated with this person, and it's been a pleasure the whole way. The opposite also happens. About 4 months ago, I met this beautiful blonde. I'm a single guy. Met this beautiful blonde. And we were both very interested in one another, if you know what I mean. So now we're going through the usual conversations. Where do you work? When are you off work? What do you like to do on the weekends? You know, all that stuff. There's a lot of stuff to talk about, right?
Sure.
And as we had like 6 or 8 different discussions like this. And as we're having these discussions, I noticed, she's low on this scale. And then we had another discussion. I said, she's low on this scale. After a while, I saw that she was low on a bunch of scales. I said, what am I, nuts? Do I really want to get involved with this? I dismissed her. I said, no, thank you. Pass.
Okay, so that is very practical, very, very practical. So this book not only is going to help the reader raise their own level, it will help them not go down dead ends
Right.
and waste their time and energy. And
It goes both ways. It helps you find the people you want in your life, and it helps you avoid the people you don't want in your life. So look, I have people all over the world who are reading my book and interviewing me, right? So I know lots of people. I meet people every day. So my whole life, I've been kind of a public figure, so I'm meeting a lot of people all the time. So it's really helpful to me to be able to look at somebody and in a matter of seconds spot him on some scale. That is as difficult for me as drinking water. It takes a little attention to drink water, like if a 3-year-old has trouble with it, right? So that's how hard it is. I look at this guy without really taxing myself. Oh, I can see this guy's at level 5 on the scale of literacy. This is not somebody I want to edit my book. He's semi-literate. But if I'm hiring that guy to be my gardener, I don't care if he's semi-literate. He probably doesn't know the difference between a gerund and a participle. Okay, it's got nothing to do with it. Does he know how to take care of my garden? Does he know what to do with the hydrangeas, what to do with the tulips, what to do with the grass? He does? Great. So like I have an auto mechanic, right? This guy's like a genius with cars. He fixes racing cars, That's like the holy grail for auto mechanics, okay? So any trouble, I just take my car over. I said, it's doing this and this. He says, okay. And I come back a couple of days, it's fixed. How much do you want? I don't care if that guy can discuss philosophy. I don't care if he has a quick temper. None of that has anything to do with me, you see? But I know on the scale of human ability, as a mechanic, he's way up there. He's at least an expert, probably higher than that. So that's how I run my whole life.
And how's it working for you?
Great. Like recently, I found a new masseuse, So I tried this masseuse. She was great. Great. I went back. Okay. Now, this person, on many of the other scales, it's obvious to me she's not high on many of these other scales. Doesn't matter. Right? She knows how to give a really expert massage. She gets a nice tip. Everybody's happy. So that's how you use this.
Okay.
So when I look at people, it could be people I see on the internet, could be people from my past, could be people I'm contemplating getting involved with. I can analyze them and know what I'm getting myself into. So let me give you an example, right? So let's say you have a couple, they've been dating for 2 years and they're talking about getting married. Wouldn't it be smart to ask, why does this person want to marry me? Isn't that a reasonable question? I'm not saying to ask the partner. I'm saying open the book. Look at the scale of motivation. There are only 7 basic human motivations, and all the others are subsets of these. So the guy looks at it. He knows what this woman is about. He's been hanging around with her for 2 years. So after he reads the chapter, he says, well, I can see she wants to marry me because she loves me. That's level 1. Good, let's set the date. But maybe that doesn't happen. Maybe he says, now that I think about this, I think she wants to marry me because I drive a Maserati, I have a 60-foot yacht, I fly my own Learjet, I live in a $20 million condo, and I have $10 million in the bank. See, that's a different motivation. I'm not saying it's good or it's bad, but it is different. Now, what he does with that is up to him. He might say, well, this woman is the best woman I have found. Okay, she wants to marry me for my money. That's not news. Lots of people want that. But I love her, so I'm going to marry her. That could happen. And she comes to him and says, honey, I want to go to Vegas for the weekend. He says, okay, here's $5,000, have a good time. And when she comes back, he gets rewarded. See, it works. But on the other hand, he might say, wait a minute, this woman is a gold digger. I don't want to marry a gold digger. I want to marry somebody who loves me for myself. There's a lot of people who try to conceal their wealth so that women will not come after them for their money. They want to know that they like them.
It goes both ways these days.
That's right. It goes both ways. So you use this to make your life better. Now, let me tell you something. Every person is at some level on every scale. So the data is just sitting there waiting for you to find it. You are at some level on the scale of spiritual identity. You are at some level on the scale of belief. You are at some level on the scale of conflict. Now, when you study these and you see what they are, you say, oh, I see what this is like. Yeah. And then you find your level because you think about it. And of course, the higher you are on the scale, the easier it will be to find your level. And the lower you are on the scale, the more difficult it will be because you have less insight in that. And that's an indication. If you come to a scale and you say, I can't figure this out, this doesn't make any sense, just leave it, go to another scale. Because that other scale, when you find out your level on that other scale, you have an insight. So you're a little smarter. So by the time you find your level on, let's say, 15 different scales, you've had 15 different insights about yourself. And now when you go back to that other scale, you're smarter, so you might be able to figure this out now. So this is a virtuous cycle. Every time you successfully find someone's level, you have a realization, whether it's yourself or another. So you're a little smarter. And you take that smartness with you to the next situation, to the next person, to the next scale. So you just keep getting smarter. And the smarter you get, the easier it is for you to use this material. And the more you use the material, the smarter you get. And it just keeps going like that. So your life just keeps getting better and better. And the beauty of it is, if you have the book, you don't need to spend any more money. You don't need to hire a coach. You don't need to join a religion. You don't need to take classes, etc., etc., etc. It's all in the book. I went out of my way to write this in a way so that somebody like you could get this book and use it right away.
That's beautiful. So as more people raise their levels, how does that impact you?
My motto in this regard is your success is my reward. I started school at the age of 3 and have been involved in education my entire life to this very day. And so I've had many, many students. So when the student gets better, I'm happy. The job of the teacher is to make himself obsolete. So I get to the student where, he's doing so well, he doesn't need me anymore. Great. I did my job. Now I get to teach somebody else. Something that I figured out many years ago is all students are temporary. No students stay with you forever. No matter how smart you are, no matter how much gain they're having, there comes a time when they move on. Well, that's what we expect, right? Guy goes to college, he wants to learn chemistry, he gets a degree in chemistry, he's ready to leave that. He's either going to go to graduate school or get a job as a chemist. See? So the teachers, they did their job. So I did the heavy lifting by giving you these, and when I say you, I mean the people of Earth, these 35 scales, each of which has 7 levels. This is very user-friendly. I went out of my way to make it not seem mathematical. So the way you experience this book is, it's like you hold up a lens and look at yourself in the mirror. So, like Sherlock Holmes going around with the magnifying glass, each one of these scales is like a big magnifying glass. So you can look at Joe through this magnifying glass, and now you see, now I see what's going on with Joe. He's at level 5. That's near the bottom. No wonder he has trouble with this. Now I know what to do with it. So this helps you to find the people you want in your life and the people you don't want in your life. But beyond that, if you analyze somebody, if you want him around, it's because he's going to be high on many of these scales. But that doesn't mean he's going to be high on every scale. So when you know that he's low on a certain scale, you are forewarned, and you can tiptoe around it. So, for example, I have a friend, wonderful person, successful, smart, funny, has a great family, blah, blah, blah. Well, this guy is what I would call a political extremist. So when this guy gets on politics, I just tiptoe around it. I don't let it be a factor. So look, I've got 3 sisters. 2 of them are conservatives and one's a liberal. I get along fine with all of them. You know why? I don't make it an issue. I just tiptoe around it. So knowing that is very useful because you can extract the goodness from the person without allowing the toxic part of the person to screw it all up.
Yeah, it sounds like it's a handbook for all relationships. And the truth about life is, seriously, by the end of life, nothing is going to matter. You won't remember anything except for what you did with someone in relationship. Relationships are everything. And with tools like this, what are your relationships like now compared to before you really put all this together and it gelled for you?
Well, I've been able to move myself up on all the scales. So life is fairly easy for me, and I don't really have difficulties with people because I know what I'm dealing with. So let me give you an analogy to explain not only how easy this is, but how to use it. Let's say you invited me to your house to see your garden. You say, Jim, come over, I'll show you my garden. Okay, so I show up at Kara's house and I say, oh, she's got tulips, nasturtiums, chrysanthemums, hydrangeas, irises, peonies, right? Now, the reason I can do that is I know a lot about flowers. I've been involved in gardening my whole life. So if you wanted, I could give you advice. I could tell you this one needs shade, this one needs more water, this one needs less water, don't overwater it. I could do that if you wanted me to. So now, if you bring, let's say, some 5-year-old kid into your garden, he's going to see and smell the same thing that I saw and smelled, but all he can say is, these are pretty and they smell nice. That's all he knows. Because he's a 5-year-old kid. He doesn't know the word hydrangea. And even if you got him to say the word and point it at the flower, he still doesn't really understand how to take care of it, what it's about. Why is it different from a tulip? You see, there's a lot to know about botany. So most people, I mean adults, are like that little kid as regards people. They don't know what they're looking at. So when I was a young man, before I discovered this, the data didn't exist. So I made the same stupid mistakes that everybody else makes because I didn't know what I was looking at. So I got involved with some people that I shouldn't have been involved with. It was a train wreck. That happens to almost everybody. They rent their house to somebody, they don't pay, they skip town, blah, 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 right? So if you had this data, you could analyze these people, see, and see, is this somebody I want to rent my house to or not? See? Or is this a girl I really want to go out with or not? See? So it depends on your purposes, what you're looking for, what you're after. So, I gave the example of a woman who's a gold digger. Let's say you have a car dealership and you're looking for a salesman. So you have a guy in and you interview him. And as you're talking to him, it becomes clear that this is a money motivated person. Hire him. That's what you want. He gets a commission for every car he sells. He's going to be out there trying to sell those cars because he wants the money. See, I would make a terrible salesman because I'm not a money motivated person. I'm the type of guy who would say, you can get this same car up the street at Acme Motors for $1,000 less. Because that's how I am. See, I wouldn't be a good salesman. So I know enough about me to know I'm not going into sales. So I've actually made the comment to people a few times that I'm incurably honest. So, I can't spin things the way some people do. I just tell them, this is it. This is what it is. These are the facts. So, you can find out who you are, where you belong, and who you should be with, who you should not be with. And again, it's just like there's no opinion involved in this. If you say this flower is a rose and this flower is a tulip, that is not an opinion. They are objectively separate. You look at the rose, you look at the tulip, and the more you study them, you see how different they are. The tulip has thorns. The rose has thorns. The tulip has no thorns. The rose grows from a bush. The tulip grows out of the ground. See? So every tulip in the world is unique. Every rose in the world is unique. But I can always tell a tulip from a rose. It's the same thing with people. Every person is unique. But using this material, you can always tell where the person is on these scales. So, and the reason for that is it's natural law. I stumbled across this information because of my career and because of my polymathic qualifications. I was able to see it for what it was. So in a sense, I asked the right question. So this facilitates asking the right question. So when you ask, where is this person on the scale of scholarship? See, if you're involved in anything about scholarship with this person, that's the right question. And you can say, this guy is a very scholarly person. He's at level 2. Yeah, this is somebody I want to tutor my kids. But if you figure out that he's at level 5, that's pretty far down on that scale. Go to the next tutor. You see?
Right.
So it depends on the context, what you're looking for.
Right.
So this is very user-friendly.
Thank you. It sounds like it really will be, and it sounds like it's already helped a ton of people. And guys, if you're at all interested, we've got the link below that you can click and order your book and get started understanding yourself and those around you, and really helps make your life better, make your life happier. So the last question that I always ask every guest, because this is called Think Your Way to an Epic Life, is what tips and tricks do you have for our folks to help them think their way to their own epic life?
Well, let me put it this way: the data in this book is vital for every person and can help you to achieve your goals faster and easier by explaining what might otherwise seem to be inexplicable or random. So, all these things that you thought were inexplicable or random are not. Talk to most guys, and if they're honest with you, they'll say they don't understand women, right? You know why? They don't have this book. If the guy analyzed his girl against these 35 scales, he would understand her better than she understands herself. He would understand her very well. Needless to say, that's only going to make the relationship better. He knows what he's dealing with. So none of this is about judgment. It's about seeing what's there, knowing what it is, and then acting accordingly. See, you're just using the data in an appropriate way. Use it to protect people and use it to help people. Both things.
Yeah, use it for good, please, guys, because anything you use for bad will come back to bite you.
Yeah.
Once again, Jim, thank you very much. Thank you for sharing this with the world and painstakingly making it to where they don't have to pay anything more than buy the book and do it. So
Right.
you have to want it, guys. You've got to do the work yourself. He's already done the heavy lifting. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kara. It was a pleasure.
It was.